Okay, absent students that need to see activity 311. So basically, I know this is activity, not notes, but we kind of did it together in class in that I gave them a few minutes to do a problem and then went ahead and went over it right away. So you can hit pause and at any time and try to get ahead and then kind of use the video to check your answer. Okay, so I'm going to work through kind of number one, but like I said, as you know, see how much you can do on your own. So pause, and if you're really stuck, watch a little bit and then hit pause and see if you can get ahead of me and use it to check. All right, so in question number one in the explanation, they do tell you a couple things that I'm going to just practice visually looking at and identifying right here. So first off, the clock in signal. This is your D-style flip-flop with the asynchronous preset and clears, and the clock signal does not have the inverter, so that makes our clock a positive edge trigger, so on the rising edge. So it's positive edge triggered. Okay. The preset and clears have the little inverter, so that means preset and clear are active low. So they take effect when we have a zero or a low voltage coming in. That zero inverts to a 1, and you kind of think logically the 1 is turning it on, but that little inverter is turning our 0 into 1. Okay? All right. So my goal is to trace along here the timing of Q when Q is high and low based on time. So know that we're moving left to right. This is a graph that represents a change over time, okay, of these voltages or values of D, the preset, clear, and clock. All right, the critical moments I'm going to trace up with a pencil that I need to worry about are the rising edge of the clocks. So all the clocks, when they go from 0 to 1, that is the moment in time that the output Q can change. And the output Q wants to match the value of D on a D flip-flop. That's kind of the synchronous part of the D flip-flop is Q matching D. So synchronous meaning they're in sync, they're working together. All right, the asynchronous part of this flip-flop is the preset clear. They override. It does not work with the data or the clock. And they just they take precedence, so they will override whatever else is happening. So I need to look for, because they're active low, anytime preset drops low. So right here, preset dropped low, so that's a critical point in time. And it's when it's dropped low that matters. It goes back up, it never goes low again. Clear drops low right here, that's a critical point in time, so I'm going to trace that up. And when it goes back high is not as important for us. Okay, so I've kind of traced all our key points in time up to the line or level of Q, so I can start drawing. All right, so at this first point, preset and clear are both 1. They're both high. You can kind of see that's the 1 level, that's 0, 1, and 0. And so when they're 1, they're inactive, because remember we said they are active low, so they're inactive at 1. So if they are inactive, they're not going to override D. And so at the rising edge of the clock, the output Q wants to match D. So D is 1, so that means Q is going to be 1. Q is going to match D, which is 1. And then that's where it's going to be through the next interval. Okay, and we've kind of already pointed out all the places I need to pause and stop and think about reevaluating my output. Okay, so at the next point, I can trace down and see why did I put that marker there, and it was because I had a rising edge of a clock. Preset and clear were still inactive, okay, which means Q is going to just match D. In this case, D is 0, so Q is going to become 0 at that point in time. And now it's at 0 for the next interval. Okay, at this point in time, the critical thing that happened is the rising edge of the clock again. Preset and clear still inactive at 1. D is currently 0, and so at this point Q wants to match D, which is 0, so it's going to stay at 0. You go, wait, hold on, Mr. Orlando, let's go back a second. You had D go up and down here, like, doesn't that do anything? It does not. Okay, with a D flip-flop, Q is only trying to update itself, okay, at these rising edges. They're just a brief moment in time, kind of that instantaneous point where it's going to change or attempt to change. And so this happening in between rising edges of the clock, we're not even looking at D. Q is not worried about what D is doing. It could go up and down a bunch of times. It's just at this instant right here that it matters what D is. Okay? All right, so at the next interval, kind of looking down, why did I mark that one? I marked it because preset became active. All right, so my computer ran out of disk space, and the recording stopped as I was doing this. So you can see the answers now. I believe I was kind of in here. So you can see when preset went low, preset becomes active, and preset makes Q want to become 1, so we went up to 1. At this point here, that was a critical time because of the rising edge. However, even though we have a rising edge, and that's kind of a time when Q would want to match D, we're ignoring D because preset is still active. Okay, so preset being active means Q is still 1. And then when preset goes inactive, that does not trigger a change. So we stayed at 1 until the next moment, which was a rising edge. Preset and clear are both inactive at 1. D is 1, so Q wanted to be D, which is 1. So it's now 1 for the next little interval to here. And tracing that back down to remember why we marked that was because clear became active, low. So clear makes Q want to be 0. So Q went to 0. It's at 0 to the next interval. Trace down, why do we mark that? That was because of a rising edge of a clock. Preset and clear had both, clear had come off. Again, that's not a moment we need to worry about, but it had come off. So in this moment, preset and clear are not overriding Q matching D. So Q wants to match D, and D is 1. So it went back to 1, and that's the end. All right, and then I moved on to number 2. And with number 2, I started kind of marking things that I noticed. And they do tell you stuff up here if you read it. But I'm just noting here that I see the inverters on preset and clear, which tell me they are active low. There is an inverter this time, a circle on the clock, which makes this clock a negative edge triggered or a falling edge. So that's when I realized my recorder wasn't recording. So I was going to go through and mark all the falling edges, the high to lows of the clock signal. Those are all critical times that I'm going to worry about. And then preset and clear are active low, so when they go low, that was another critical time. So I'm going to trace up, just with my pencil, all those critical markers. And this is not a D flip-flop, this is a JK flip-flop, but we'll talk about that in just a second after I trace these up. Okay, so in a D flip-flop up above, we have it's like a 1-bit input. It's one value that has the ability to be a 0 or a 1. So we have kind of 2 combinations. With 2 inputs, J and K, we have 4 different combinations. You can have J, K be 0, 0. They can be 0, 1. They can be 1, 0, or 1, 1. Now, we had said the output Q, when J and K are both 0, is to be the same as the original, kind of whatever you were. So it's a no change command. This is all to happen on the rising edge of the clock. If J and K are different, then we'd say Q wants to match J. So Q wants to be 0 in this case where we have 0, 1. And when we have J1, K0, J1 or Q wants to be J again, so 1. And when you have both J and K1, this is the opposite of the current value. So that means to toggle, they say, to change, or maybe to flip-flop. Okay, so we kind of have 4 different cases. 2 of the cases give us specific values. The other two cases give us a relative to the current value. Either don't change what you are or change what you are, for sure change. Okay? All right, so going across this, again, pause if you want to try this on your own before I do it. Okay, on the falling edge of the clock this time, because of that inverter, on the falling edge, preset and clear are inactive. Remember, they are active low. They are ones. You can see kind of the heights here. So that was the 1 and that's the 0. They're inactive, which means we're going to look at JK. J is high, K is low. So when they are different is when Q wants to match J. J is 1, so Q goes to 1. And it'll be there for that next timing interval. Now, at the next one, tracing down to see, that was an important time because of a falling edge. Preset and clear were both inactive. J is 0 and K is 1. They're different. When they're different, Q wants to match J. J is 0, so it wants to be 0. So it'll go to 0 for the next interval. And at the next one, the next important time was a falling edge again. Preset and clear still inactive at 1. J is 1, K is 1. That's the 1, 1 toggle command. So be the opposite of whatever you are. If you're 0, go to 1. If you're a 1, go to 0. So we're a 0, so go to 1. It's just go to the opposite value no matter what. All right, at the next interval, let's see, it's a falling edge of the clock. Preset and clear still inactive. So we're still looking at just J and K. They are both 0. Okay, the 0, 0 combination is the no change combination. So whatever height you're at, stay there. So we're at 1, so stay at 1. If we were down at 0 at this interval, we'd stay at 0. We were at 1, so stay at 1. Okay, at the next point in time, okay, we've got the clear went active. So when clear goes active, we don't even have to worry about JK. We override. So you're kind of thinking, oh, what about this? Nope, overriding, asynchronous override. Ignore JK. So right here, clear goes active. So what does clear do? Clear wants to make Q be 0. So we're going to go down to 0 and move to the next interval. And let's see. Oh, something we need to worry about. So that interval was because of the falling edge of the clock. However, the clear is still being held. So clear is still overriding JK. So I'm not going to worry about it. So that clear overriding JK is true at both of these 2 points. Even though that point had a falling edge of the clock, that's okay. All right, now next, so we stay 0, right, to here. All right, this was because preset went low. So when preset goes low, that makes Q want to be 1. So we went up to 1, over to here, and here preset is 1, it's inactive. Clear is 1, it's inactive. Okay, when preset went inactive, that transition back to inactive doesn't toggle a change or trigger a change. So anyway, at this last falling edge, these are inactive. So we're back to looking at JK. J is 1, K is 1. They're both high. 1, 1 is the toggle command. So whatever you're at, go to the other value. So we're at 1, so go to 0.